and welcome to Critical Eye. Our show this week is going to focus on a vital topic. It's the anniversary of Imam Khomeini's passing, and he's really a figure who has rocked the 20th century, but certainly the reverberations of what Grand Ayatollah Khomeini did, his legacy, if you like, is burning into the 21st century like a bright light in so many ways. So many issues on current affairs across the Middle East, across the world, are still very much shaped by the actions of Imam Khomeini in his lifetime. Who was this man? Many call him a mystic. Some regard him as a politician. Others think of him as a theologian and a cleric. It's really that almost enigmatic, charismatic energy which so many people across the Muslim world adopted, which still causes a huge amount of fascination and discussion. Of course, he wasn't just about the Islamic Revolution and what happened in Iran in 1979. There was an entire build-up to that, which really also is something well worth analyzing, whether it's his theology, whether it's his political development, or whether it's his thoughts on education and other matters. We're going to try and touch some of these points to give you a flavor of what it means to understand the real Imam Khomeini. With me in the studio today, well, actually on our usual lines news system, we've got Sayyid Muhammad Razavi, Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin. Sayyid Muhammad Razavi, welcome to the show, Molana.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome, and thank you for hosting.
Yeah, and we'll also have Dr. Inayatullah Indrabi joining us just after the break. Of course, we have our Adhan break, which will come up very shortly, after which I'm sure we're going to welcome his very studious analysis of the legacy of Imam Khomeini. Yeah, but say we've got this idea of so many notions of Imam Khomeini, and in terms of the legacy that he's left, which part of that for you is the most outstanding, the thing that really really stands out, and that is still something which affects us today?
One of the titles that was famous in slogans and newspapers and media at the beginning of Islamic Revolution regarding Imam Khomeini was that he was known as Khomeini But Shekan. Khomeini, the idol breaker. I like that title because this reminds us what Prophet Muhammad did against the idols of his time. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came, the holy Kaaba was full of idols, and people used to worship in this holy place. Instead of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they had begun to worship idols, and so there were so many idols around the world, and Prophet Muhammad, all those idols. And Imam Khomeini, after 1,400 years of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as a descendant from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, did what majority of the Muslims also believe, that after every few hundred years or 100 years, there is a mujaddid, I mean the person who reintroduces Islam in a very revolutionary way that creates awakening amongst the Muslims. By the time Imam Khomeini came, the world and the Muslims had developed into a certain type of living that was accepted everywhere, and it had become a norm, and Islam had become Imam Khomeini came and all those idols, and that's why he was Khomeini But Shekan, the person who broke the idol. So I personally like this title of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, and consider him as the person who had to come and take up this responsibility to create awakening. And on look at the last years or 50 or 60 years since he started his revolution from Iran. Then he was expelled from Iran, and he went to Turkey, and he went to Iraq, and then continued his leadership from Iraq until the Shah was killed, and he came back to Iran. When he came back to Iran, he did not only topple the idols in Iran, he toppled the idols throughout the Muslim world, whether Sunni or so, and that is what is annoying the non-Muslims, or I would rather enemies of Islam, who do not like Islam to flourish.
Well, it's fascinating. I think that's such a great concept to just focus on for the entire program, the idol breaker, because idols, as you sort of pointed out, can be dictatorships, models of governance which are immoral. Idols could be materialism, could be, you know, the desire for hyper, you know, material capitalist concept. It could be breaking the idols of the economic system, the idols, if you like, of the self, the ego, people's individualism and selfishness, etc. All of these things come into what we would regard broadly as false gods, false idols. And in Mecca, while you mentioned that in the cover they would have been of stones, but actually symbolically, it was even then arguably that the Prophet Muhammad was breaking the idols of his time in terms of the same problems, the same hypermaterialism, the arrogance, the destruction of human rights, the violation of women, the killing of infant children, girls especially, birth. Such heinous crimes were taking place, idols that had been built up that I think, Molana, you're talking about. I won't go too much further. I'm going to pick up the show again in another few minutes after sunbreak, because I believe we've probably reached that time. But that was a great introduction, sets us up nicely. But there are some things I'm going to expressly. We've got, even within Shia Islam, traditionally, there were two or three ways of, if you like, acting among these kind of idolatry, false gods that were created in terms of kings and dictators, etc., and despots or sultans. And by bringing down the Pahlavi dynasty, arguably even within Shia Islam, which he had created a new precedent, because he'd, if you like, smashed this idea that you could justify a monarchy or a kingship. Certainly the Buyid dynasty, during the Buyid dynasty, this was something that Sayyid Murtaza had, if you like, sanctioned, the idea of a just king, and following that just king was what Imam Khomeini does. He brings forward the rule of the scholars, or if you like, the Valayat-e Faqih, which was something to this day still many people do not fully understand, the legacy of Imam Khomeini today. A fascinating figure, a vital figure, a figure that still impacts the 21st century with the revolution that took place in the Islamic Republic of Iran, a figure who we know to be mystic, philosopher, politician, but arguably a theologian as well, of course, and many, many other things. It's a really fascinating character, which I think most of the world still has not fully come to terms with as to who he was and what his impact is. Certainly in the kind of times we live now, in which everybody is clearly questioning systems, politics, questioning our economic and social order, questioning the integrity of our leaders, questioning the kind of policies that we've had initiated, either capitalist, communist, or otherwise. What we have is a world which is highly insecure and very, very unstable. How have we come to this? Is it something to do with the way we're led? Many people are arguing that actually, from a top-down basis, a hierarchical elite has led us to a point where ultimately we are at the behest of those who are rich and powerful. Was it ever different? Is it really anything new? Is it just a new kind of system that is being reset? Well, if we're into setting new systems, we must think of at least one which has some sort of moral integrity, ethical integrity, something which deals with virtue ethics at its heart and prophetic ethics. Those characteristics such as kindness, generosity, fairness, justice, love, these things, these traditional virtues, which in politics almost seem non-existent. With me in the studio is Molana Muhammad Razavi. Welcome to the show, Agha.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for hosting.
Yes. Well, I've thrown the general backdrop. What's the significance of the life and times of Imam Khomeini to the current, if you like, climate that people are faced with in terms of political systems? He brought something called Velayat-e Faqih. Tell us a little bit first about that particular system, given that that could be something which impacts certainly West Asia and perhaps beyond over the coming years, and especially with the vacuum that is increasingly building up in terms of the way the system is being rejigged or changed, with everything from COVID through to potential world war and race riots around the world going on.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as a social being, and one of the requirements of the social being is to have leadership. And the leader plays the role of guardian in the society. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He transferred us from metaphysical dimension to the physical dimension of this world by creating Adam and Eve, He had thought of the program for the human being from beginning to and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew as a creator of us as social beings that we would require a leader, and that leader, if is a leader who has faults, who is full of wrongdoings, could not be the ideal leader. Therefore, Allah said that I am the person, I am the being who will appoint the leader. So the first leader that was appointed for human being was Adam, and the last leader that is appointed by Allah Ta'ala is going to be Mahdi, one of the descendants of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in other words, the planet Earth or universe will be without a vicegerent from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, without a leader, without a guardian, and we will never be left without a guardian. And we as a Shia Muslims believe that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has blessed us with that guardianship throughout the creation and throughout that human beings living this planet. So you may ask this question, okay, if we believe that leader would be exist, and if we believe that Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu is the last leader, and then we also believe that he is an occultation, how can that guardianship and leadership be applicable in the present day and world? And that was predicted by holy imams, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the information to the holy imams that the enemies would be trying to target the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu, and he ordered Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu to remain in occultation and guiding the Ummah and the nation through his wisdom and guardianship. And there are narrations that which explain the guardianship of Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu is quite similar to what this is just an example. We should not argue in examples. Examples are given to bring our minds closer to the reality. Usually this is given the way sun gives its benefit even from behind the clouds. Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu keeps guiding us and monitoring and provides his leadership through his occultation. And during this period of occultation, the description that was given to Lima was that the Ulema, who are the most knowledgeable, most brave, and most pious, and most daring, would be taking the leadership of Ummah, and it was the responsibility of the Ummah to choose them and follow them. And as far as this kind of leadership is concerned, it's not restricted to certain people. Anyone, any human being can choose the path of piety and follow this journey and reach to the highest level and be blessed with the honor and responsibility and duty of being the leader of the Ummah. And that leadership is not complete if the leader does not have the full authority. So, according to Shia belief, all the Maraja Taqleed, and there is not a single Maraja Taqleed who does not believe that they do not have wilaya and guardianship over the people. If they didn't believe, they wouldn't be able to give permissions to the scholars for finding out the problem. The society has divorce without husband's permission is one of the smallest example that a marja taqleed can appoint his representative or a scholar to execute the wilayat and guardianship over peace in the society. So Imam Khomeini believed that a marja not have almost equal authority to an infallible imam, cannot be a true guide and true leader of the society. And this happens only for selected people. One or two people in the society reach to this high level, and they are guided by Imam Mahdi and Imam, and they become the supreme leaders and the guardians and Wali Amr of the Muslims in the society. So Wali Faqih comes from this, and Wali Faqih is basically any marja taqleed has wilayat, but the wilayat of the Wali Faqih, the supreme authority, even marja taqleed, if a Wali Faqih gives hukm and order, even the Maraja Taqleed, other Maraja Taqleed have to obey that order. And first of all, he would not give an order, and if he gives an order, then the Maraja Taqleed also follow it, because we want to establish the society with the guardianship of the infallible, and infallibles have taught us this is the way to lead the Ummah during the period of occultation.
Well, that's a fascinating, if you like, overview. And for those who don't know, that must be a bit of an eye opener. But it does make logical sense that in a globe where, of course, we need to have some sort of system. We can't have an anarchical system. We can't have a corrupt set of leaders. We cannot have people who have no link to any kind of virtue ethics or morality, make up their morality as they go along, being appointed as leaders. And it seems to me that Imam Khomeini, after a very, very long time, even in Islamic nations and countries, emerges with this fascinating model. Of course, this model took time to evolve, because when he was in his period of, if you like, trying to persuade the existing powers that be, the Shah of Iran, to operate in a more ethical and moral Islamic way, that was also a role of a leader in ways, where he was trying to guide somebody who had the power, i.e. the Shah, to act ethically and morally. Of course, before that, there were, as I mentioned in the previous part of our program, that actually there was an established system where the Shia jurisprudence actually validated a just king, the concept of supporting even a just king. He didn't necessarily have to be, at that time, a marja or a taqlid as such, but just he was meant to be advised by good ulama who were able to keep him on track. That was the other system. The third system that was in existence was just quietism, absolutely just not participating in political affairs at all. And that often led to the rise of really bad imperialists and people who practiced very non-Islamic, if you like, practices. That's an overview of how actually even the Shia ulama over the ages have dealt with things when they had oppressive imperialists who were trying to kill them and destroy them. That period also, many times, I guess, people went into taqiyya also and had to save lives because life is precious and primary. So there have been interesting changes in the way that Muslims have operated their leadership, good, bad, and ugly. Do you think that now, the era that we have now, and the situation we have post Imam Khomeini and the legacy he's left, that actually Muslim nations have no excuse? They can see that there's a model here that can be emulated, and it's something that they should explore. And is it something they are exploring across the world?
Well, I mean, even Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi, he used to say that we are trying to be on the right path. He never claimed that he is infallible. He never claimed that they are 100% equal to infallible Ma'soom. But he believed that without having the authority, he cannot establish the government. He cannot establish the platform for the government of Imam Mahdi Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu. We as a Muslims have a responsibility not to just sit idle. We are not from those people who, and unfortunately this kind of people exist in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Sunnism and Shiaism, that let the corruption take over the world, and so it ends, and then we have a peaceful government. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us to remain silent in front of an oppression being committed. If is being committed, responsibility to raise our voices. I mean, like what happened recently in America. If we remain silent, they would dare to even commit bigger and greater crime against the blacks or any other people in America. So it is the duty and responsibility for us to not to remain idle, to raise our voice. We have to stand up to prepare the grounds for the return of Jesus Christ. We have to prepare the grounds for the return of Allah Ta'ala Farajuhu to lead the world into a peaceful place. Imam Mahdi would be assisted by Jesus Christ, and he will encourage and ask his followers, the Christian followers, to believe in Imam Mahdi, and he will pray behind Imam Mahdi Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu, and the world will be a peaceful place to live in. But we have to be positive, constructive, and also we should not give up rulers of the time way to prepare the grounds for Imam Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu's just government. And by promoting corruption, I mean, I know a group of Shia Muslim brothers in they used to be very pious and practicing group of people. Suddenly they ended up having a corrupt leader who misled them, and now they are doing everything wrong that can be done, and they believe that they are preparing the grounds for emergence of Imam Mahdi Ajallah Ta'ala Farajuhu by promoting the corruption, which is wrong. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is just, and he will punish those people who are committing and promoting corruption, because promotion of corruption is not the aim. The aim is to establish a just and peaceful society based on these principles.
Well, one of the guiding principles that Imam Khomeini certainly talked about was the support of the mustazafin, the oppressed. That was a consistent theme of his. take another one where
What do you think?
he talked. Yes. So this standing up against oppression can mean corrupt governments, corrupt systems, corrupt economic orders. And it would arguably also mean, on the one hand, of course, Palestine was a major focus of Imam Khomeini, and he established Al-Quds State, which only recently passed by. But that's an abiding legacy of his. And in a way, you could argue that Imam Khomeini, with his influence on Lebanon and the resistance axis in Lebanon, revived that whole idea of tackling oppression head on, and certainly the oppression of Israel in Palestine and upon Lebanon and upon its neighbors generally was one that needed tackling. And if we look now, after these 50 or 60 years since his passing away, we can see that it's alive. The flame of fighting oppression is stronger today than it was certainly in his own time. I mean, the people of Hamas, the people of the Hezbollah, whether it's the Lebanese government, all of them are still very much struggling. You can see that on the ground, and it was based on the backing of Imam Khomeini's, if you like, legacy in the region of South Lebanon, which triggered it in the defeats of Israel twice. 2 times Israel has been defeated. And in a way, it was trying to oppress the Lebanese by taking over the country. It's still trying to oppress those areas. But the struggle and the resistance, do you think that's a legacy of Imam Khomeini? Am I right in saying that those are just 2 areas that we can say, yes, Imam Khomeini's legacy is very much alive?
Yes, of course it is alive. If his legacy were not alive, we wouldn't witness the confrontation in this world. I mean, he created awareness. The Mustaqim of the world, oppressed people of, oppressed and down people of the world, that they should not remain silent. So Palestinians are certainly one of the Mustazafin, and Kashmiris are other group of Mustazafin, and there are so many Mustazafin around the world, in Burma, China, all other countries. So these are the people who would be led with the leader Mustazafin, that is Imam Mahdi. I think we are coming to the last few minutes of this program. Otherwise, there is a lot that we could discuss about the legacy of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh.
Well, we've covered some really major areas, and I think that from my point of view, in terms of the conclusion, it seems as though when you try to smash a system down, which is corrupt, like the Shah's was, you need to be able to replace it with something better. And I think to replace things that are better, you certainly need institutions of integrity. You need to be able to find solutions for people. You need to be able to feed them. You need to be able to create more wealth equality. You need to be able to give them medication, give them housing, give them those basic things which often the tyrants don't give adequately. And you also have to try to manage those aspects of moral existence which actually are harming society as well. If we look at the Islamic Republic of Iran or any of the models that are trying to follow in the footsteps of Imam Khomeini in terms of building up new institutions, alternative institutions to many of the corrupt ones, whether it's World Bank, World Trade Organization, the IMF, most of the organizations you think of institutionally on a global scale have a degree of corruption which focuses on serving structural elite money power. Whereas it does seem to me that if you were to analyze carefully the movement, the resistance movement, the revolutionary movement, the Islamic revolutionary movement that has been seeded across certainly West Asia and beyond, it all has in common at the heart of it the building of new institutions, the building of pious leadership, and the building of a front against oppressive rulers. This, for me, is the legacy of Imam Khomeini, which abides physically, and it's one that is a work in progress. It's a one which is trying to be stamped out by the global arrogance and the powers that be. It's one that is going to see the 21st century certainly light up far more. And the battle, I think, ultimately of good and evil is being borne out in this. And I pretty much can, from my point of view, verify certainly that the resistance axis, which actually is inspired by Imam Khomeini's legacy, is certainly on the side of the good. Those who are opposing it certainly seem to be evil in the literal sense. You know, they don't have policies which are based on pious goodness for all and bringing humanity to the point of justice, which Maulana has outlined very well in this program. Thank you for watching this edition of Critical Eye. You can never do justice to a subject like this in a short space, but I hope we've given you a little flavor, and I'm sorry we couldn't get Dr. Andrabi to join us due to technical problems. It was unfortunately not possible. Maybe on another show we'll revisit this program, but certainly the legacy of Imam Khomeini lives. That is clear. Thank you for watching this edition of Critical Eye.